call the Law Enforcement, Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee meeting, October 18th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. And we'll begin with a moment of silence, please. Mr. Rubin?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Father, thank you again for this day that you've given us. Thank you for bringing us safely here together to talk about health and safety, the public welfare, and the general good of this county. I pray that you would give us your wisdom and your foresight in particular. We can only know so much with our limited capacity, but you know all, so we want to lean into that. Help us to do that. Help the committee members to have your wisdom and insight, and staff to have the ability and the just desire to endeavor to do all we can to make this county a safer and better place. Pray in your name. Amen.
Sheriff Crenshaw, will you lead us in the pledge, please, sir?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Get a motion to approve meeting minutes July 19th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
That is 3-0.
Discussion items, law enforcement, staffing, and salary. Sheriff Mike Crenshaw.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this and your consideration for when we talk about public safety staffing and salaries. Obviously, my focus is going to be on law enforcement. Historically, over the last 35 years, I think we're to be very thankful and appreciative to past councils and our current council for the salaries that we do have for law enforcement. 35 years ago, a deputy started out at about $12,000 a year, 1986, 87. And today, we're at 40,000 and then 41.5 once they get that certification. But with that being said, we're at a very critical time in public safety, I think, in our profession, due to many circumstances. I think some just where we're at in the world right now. Post-COVID, I think, is a factor, but the view toward the law enforcement profession is certainly a factor in recruiting folks into the job. And we didn't have to do that in years past. There was a time when we had applications and it was very difficult to get hired. But the applications has really gone down. We've tried to recruit. We go to Tri-County Tech, talk to those graduates. We go to Anderson University. We go to Southern Wesleyan. Any opportunity we get. And with the recent law change, where we can hire 18-year-olds in the detention center now, we're going to Hamilton Career Center and talking to the law classes there. We have been able to hire some 18-year-olds that want to get into the law enforcement profession, so we've been able to do that. Current staffing levels, I think we're about 2 short in the detention center. I've got 1 dispatcher short, and then I still have not filled the 3 new positions that you gave me in July. I've had 2 retirements, and 1 death, of course, with Deputy Orr. And then I lost a veteran officer to the Highway Patrol for much more money, along with a signing bonus. And I think I've got maybe 1 or 2 that's looking at state transport police. So that's a challenge for us too, because with state salaries, Highway Patrol starting out about $50,000 a year now, right at it. State Transport Police, I think, is about 46, 47, 48 in that range, as well as DNR. So, it's a constant battle. But with that being said, we've tried to capitalize on what we do have to offer in Oconee County, which is very good health insurance, very reasonable health insurance when compared to the state plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but currently what we pay for health insurance is very reasonable when compared to the state health plan. And I know that because we've been able to hire some folks from some other agencies, and they were making more money, but when I looked at their health insurance, it was close to almost half of what they would pay here for what they were paying in health insurance, and that kind of offset. So that was a big benefit, I think, for us to capitalize on. Tried to incentivize any way we can, but going forward, some considerations. Ms. Brock has been working. She's been working on this for several months, and just today sent us the latest that she has on a public safety retention pay grade system going forward. Maybe that, from my understanding, hopefully be presented at budget time next year. I think that will be a big help. Regardless of whether you give a cost of living raise or any other kind of raise, then that public safety employee knows they're going to get that step increase. So it gives them something from a retention standpoint for us. For that employee. Well, if I stay here 5 years, I know where I'm going to be if I don't get promoted, or if the county doesn't give any cost of living raises. 10 years, I know where I'll be. If we can get something like this implemented and in place, it gives employees, I think, from a retention standpoint for us, when they see that the grass is greener financially, but yet they like it here, and they say, well, if I stay here 2 or 3 more years, I'll be there. I don't have to worry about future councils or what they're going to do, because this is in place. So I hope you will consider that come budget time next year, because I think that will play a huge role in us being able to retain folks once we get them trained. If we can get them to that 5 to 7 year point, there's no reason that we should lose them. We really need to keep them, especially with all that we've invested in them from a training standpoint. Some other things, to consider as we move forward. I've talked with some agencies that, of course, there's some agencies now that's currently offering a sign-on bonus. You don't get it up front. Maybe you get part of it, and you get the rest of it if you stay 2 years or whatever. One thing that I thought of is our current employees are our greatest asset, and lots of times they refer folks to us. We're possibly looking at an employee referral program for our current employees. If they refer someone to us and we're able to hire them, that we give them an incentive, for that. There's some agencies that currently public safety, uniform patrol for me works 12-hour shifts, and everyone else is usually on either a 10-hour shift or an 8-hour shift. But incentivizing those folks, day shift and night shift differentials. There's some agencies that's offering incentives. If you work night shift, you get paid more than you do on working a day shift. Something else that I think we ought to consider going forward. Currently, we struggle to hire certified, trained deputies. And part of that reason is that we can't, somebody that's been somewhere 5, 6, 7 years, they're making a pretty good salary, and they're going to take a pay cut if they come to work with us. Currently, the only opportunity I have per county policy is to offer them up to 4% above that starting pay, or I can get Ms. Brock's permission and go up to 6%. You know, I've seen some agencies very, very close to us that, you know, certified officer starting out at 42, an officer with 3 years' experience can start out at 46, 5 years' experience 48, 7 years' experience 51. So again, you know, if we want to be able to recruit and be able to draw experienced police officers, that's something I think we need to consider as well at some point going forward. Educational incentives. We encourage our folks to go back and pursue their education. We have, through our Sheriff's Foundation, we have scholarship opportunities that we offer them. And we currently have, I know 2, maybe 3 that are going back for their master's degree. I think in part because, you know, the Sheriff's Foundation is reimbursing them $1,000 per year. I'm not gonna pay for it, but it certainly helps. So, but some agencies will offer 2% for an associate's degree, 4% for a bachelor's degree, and maybe 5-6% for a master's degree. So, you know, some things there that incentives that, you know, not only can we use, I think this pay scale, you know, certainly money means a lot. You know, money is important. And I've said this from day one, you know, and I'll say it still today. No one gets into public safety for the money. You get into it for other reasons, but it comes a point when you get married, you have family, you have kids, that you've got to provide for them. And if you can't do that, that's when people get out of the profession. Or we see folks working landscaping jobs or working 2 or 3 other jobs just to be able to provide for their family. Which increases their stress level. You know, are we getting their best, that best officer out here on the street when they've worked 12 hours at, you know, somewhere else the very next day when they're supposed to be off? So those type things, but you know, that's some things that I think we ought to consider. I would like to consider going forward. Not only being able to offer a step increase every year that someone commits to serve Oconee County, as well as if you commit to better yourself, if you get some type of certification, and I think she's got that built in as far as some type of certification, they would get a step increase. Educational incentives, shift differentials, and the incentives for experience. If we had some more leverage on that from just the 4% to 6%, and we possibly could attract some more experienced officers. From a staffing standpoint, you know, I think that our county's growing. You all know this. You know what's being built in our county, the housing developments, the student housing developments that's coming. So yes, we need to continue to add that manpower each year, whether it's 2 officers, 3 officers, 1 officer, you know, whatever we can afford. You know, some folks have asked me, well, you need 10 or you need 20. I couldn't fill them if you gave them to me. That's just where we're at in our world. We had interviews last week. Was going to interview 6. 3 didn't even show up. 1 call. I don't know if it was day shift or night shift. We told him it was probably nights. He wanted days, so he said he withdrew his application. But the other 2 didn't call, didn't even show up. So we're going to interview some more this week, and you know, we're still finding. We've identified a young man that I think will make a great deputy. We're currently talking with a 10-year military veteran that will be getting out in January that I think we're going to be able to bring on board with us as well. It will be an asset to our agency as well. So, but yeah, from staffing, we do need to continue to have that visible presence, that marked uniform. So, you know, I see us growing uniform patrol, that uniform deputy. Is where we need to grow. That's where we need those deputies seen in Mountain Rest and Salem and Fairplay, and those folks that are having drug problems. You know, that deputy stopping those cars if they're in that area, or just patrolling, just preventing crime. You know, how many crimes can we prevent just by patrolling the roads in the county and that marked unit being seen? That certainly serves as a deterrent, and you all know that. So, school safety standpoint, Mr. Davis, I think you and I have had a conversation about this, but, you know, we continue to see school shootings, and I think we're in a good position with every school having a resource officer. But, you know, some days that resource officer, if he's out sick, you know, we try to fill in. If we've got 2 or 3 out sick, the school's not covered. We don't advertise that. We don't know, but we try to cover it the best we can. But one thought, you know, our high schools continue to grow. That student population continues to go up, especially Walhalla and Seneca. I think West Oak maybe some as well. But possibly looking at adding a resource officer at the high schools. And then that way, if a middle school is out or an elementary is out, then they can leave and go fill in there. Or a deputy has to go to court, you know, whatever. Where we constantly got coverage. We've got a resource officer at every school. So I would like to consider that going forward. We would zone it off, you know, but have about 6 schools in the Seneca area, about 6 in Walhalla and 6 in Westminster, West Oak area. And, you know, if one of those schools had a vacant, somebody had to leave or whatever, then the high school resource officer would leave. If not, he can stay busy there. Vaping is a big issue in our schools. We're dealing with that now. Writing tickets daily. We've met with our senator to discuss some things legislatively to help us address that as well. But real quick on school safety, I appreciate Chief Crine and or Director Crine. I'm sure I don't want to call you the wrong, but you know, he's helping us plan a tabletop drill now for an active shooter drill that we're going to be conducting at one of our schools coming up soon. And then we're going to be planning an actual hands-on drill probably next year. So, like I say, just another step we're taking. We're working, making sure we're testing all of our operations plans from police, fire, EMS, the school operations plan itself. So, constantly thinking about school safety, and I think we need to continue to think about that because we continue seeing school shootings happening across our country. So, staffing, salaries. I know we've got a full agenda, but I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions or if you want me to touch on anything else.
Well, I got one question. So if we can't cover our school one day, is there a way that we could park a car in front of the school just for the parents?
We get creative, yes, sir. We do. You know, if we can't cover, we've done that. So, but we certainly try any way possible. And we'll pull from Peter to pay Paul because we want the school safe. So we'll pull from other areas if we have to. We may pull somebody out of uniform patrol, somebody out of CID or another unit to cover that. But it's taken away from, you know, their responsibilities. So that's where if we had that additional high school SRO, I think would be a huge benefit for us. Yes, sir. Anything else?
Thank you for coming today. I think the number one thing that we've kind of worked on, you know, continuing to work on increases, especially when you start getting into the inflation that we're in now. We saw it coming. We've adjusted. We've added some increases, multiple years, as well as having the ARPA funds and stuff like that. Some of that's one-time money, some of it's continuing money. So I'm very appreciative of council agreeing to have those increases moving forward. So for the small number that you have open, to me, it would be much larger if we had sat back and done nothing to it. So I stand behind, you know, that, as well as those increases going forward. It's a whole lot easier to plan and budget to have an increase across the board. That's helping out with retention, because if you look at our job openings, the job openings are those making less than 40,000, or some of them making less than 35,000. So as we see this trend up here, we need to make those adjustments. It's not that every job in the county is going to be a $45,000 job, but we really need to start looking at long-term goal instead of, being a training ground for an officer to move to the next county. We need to make sure that we're working on that retaining. I know you got a lot of things in place. The salaries are helping. The salary schedule that Ms. Brock and her team has put together is headed in that right direction for that. So I'm very appreciative and continue to push forward to making sure that, again, it's you state that officers don't get in here to get rich, but they also are in here to give back to their community while making sure to actually make a living wage,
Yes, sir.
and a good wage.
Yes, sir.
And Oconee County is a very safe county to work in. That speaks highly of your officers and the other ones that report to those scenes as well. That's great. We don't have, I don't think our officers are in fear of their life, and that speaks volumes to the radios that we've put in place, the equipment that y'all put in place. So I appreciate y'all continuing to bring that stuff up and having that. The SROs in the high school, we've talked about that, just from a mere population of what we're facing in each of the high schools and the ability to get to there on those campuses. And the SROs is more of a crime prevention. I think if anybody really speaks to SROs like I do, you do, several council members do, you really learn what they do. The mentoring, to me, the crimes that they've stopped from happening, especially some of the sex abuses that have happened and have been reported through there, that y'all been able to have somebody to come and talk to. They don't have to dial a number. They can see the officer, and they talk to the officers, and to see the impact that these guys have and the ladies have in the community is unbelievable. So there's no dollar figure to put on back, and we were a part of getting that in there. I'm one of the first in the county to put that in every single school. So to me, as we move forward with having those SROs in the high schools, that to me is one thing. We talked about additional deputies as we move forward, and this is going into next year's budget season. I wanted to bring this up because every month throughout the year, we're planning for next year's budget. So we talked about 3 additional deputies on top of the 3 school resource officers is kind of what we're looking at. So I just wanted the committee to be aware of what I was thinking, what you were thinking, and give them an opportunity to speak as well. As we're moving forward, our population growth may only show 78, 79. It's probably more in the 81, 82. And then in the summertime, we're probably in the 85,000 range at times. So the lake is a big issue. Y'all have done a lot of things around Fall Creek. We've still had some deaths over there, unfortunately, but I think y'all have done a great job of being there. And that takes an entire officer, pretty much the entire day at Fall Creek, away from running roads. So thank you for what y'all are doing there.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure working with you over the past, 8.5 years. And I won't be here, of course, next year when y'all are going through the budget, but I think it's important to recognize the challenges that we currently face and that we'll continue to face in the future. Inflation's, may stabilize, but prices are not going down. It might stop going up, but it's certainly not going down. So I think, establishing something like this where where officers and your folks in your department and potentially all departments will know what they can count on, which helps you keep them here, keep them employed here, so they're not looking to go somewhere else. It's always difficult to highlight or to sell. Well, in my experience, my earlier years when I was in a management trainee role, when we were trying to hire employees and you try to tell them, well, yeah, but your health insurance is cheaper, your retirement's better. They say, what's going to my bank account next Friday? And it's just
A
a
5-year-old, that doesn't mean nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, I still got, 25 years or 30 years of work before I can even touch that money. So, yeah, that's an uphill battle. It's worth continuing to, I think, highlight, but it's probably not gonna move the needle if they're looking at 50,000 versus 41,000 or 42,000. It doesn't translate. But I do think establishing a, step scale that they can count on is important. And I also think, the education incentives, those are a great thing. And also making sure that officers, folks with experience who can step in and say, "Hey, I got 5 years' experience." If that translates into the pay scale, that's huge for being able to hire trained officers. I would encourage council to strongly consider implementing this. As far as like a referral incentive, that's something, and then with education incentive as well. Not everybody's gonna take advantage of that, so it's not gonna be, you're not gonna have to worry about 100 people doing that. And if you got 3 openings right now, or I don't remember exactly how many, did you have 5 openings?
6.
6 openings. So even if you did $500 or $1,000, I don't know what number you're thinking about, from a referral incentive standpoint, hopefully those people, you're not having that turnover all the time, and so you can get folks in there. That's a fantastic thing that I think maybe we ought to implement throughout our entire county HR policies, because if we can get these roles filled, it's great when it goes to the fund balance at the end of the year when we don't have somebody serving that role. It's not great on the service quality during the year. So, it puts additional burden on everybody else, and, want to get those filled as soon as possible. And then I do agree, given the growth, and I know we're off of the, based on the things you and I've talked about and what you've mentioned in meetings before, where we should be versus where we are, adding at least 3 officers every year while our population's growing, assuming it continues to grow. But at the same time, we got to figure out how to fill the positions that we've got right now that are approved. You got 6 of them that have been open since what? July? Yeah.
Yep.
So August, September, October, 4 months, still 3.5 months, still not filled. So got to do something. And we deal with it. I know Ms. Brock deals with it on the county government, outside of law enforcement side too. So
Every business.
every business, everybody's dealing with it. Yeah, it's easy to hire people. It's hard to hire good people. But thank you very much for all your work in law enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reed?
Animal control?
Yes, sir.
I believe we can do this relatively quickly. Jennifer, are you able to pull up the backup ordinance? We went over this. These are the suggested revisions from animal control staff, law enforcement. We went through the proposed revisions last committee meeting, and I was charged with 2 things. One was to incorporate in a few amendments to the proposed revisions based on our discussion. I incorporated those in. You should have seen them in your backup material. It's kind of like a purplish color. So I believe those, I went back through the meeting and my notes, and those reflected what y'all wanted changed. So assuming that we got those accurate, here you can see the first one is in 4.2, the definition number 1. Gonna restructure that language a little bit to make it, I wouldn't say less harsh, but a little bit more viable as far as the standards for a shelter. And that was based on one of your motions. And then the next revision was on page 3, Jennifer, which is there. We're just striking the reference to the noise, all animal noise violations being presented. Rather, we're just reference to the noise ordinance just above that. So adding clarity there. And then in section 4.4, this is the last request, I believe, aside from the shalls being substituted for should, was that we had a reference clearly in 4-4 noting that, restraint does include confinement on the owner's or custodian's premises, and reference to the definitions to make that clear. So those were the suggested revisions that y'all asked for. The other thing you charged me with was to come back through the ordinance and make sure, not that it wasn't just consistent with state law, because it is. State law, defers in this one area, defers to local governments to a large extent, and says you can do essentially what you would like to do as far as animal control ordinances go. But you wanted to make sure that it lined up with state law, and it does. There were two areas that I found that it doesn't line up exactly, and this is 4-6. So yes, in 4-6D, just keep on going ahead. So this speaks to an identifiable animal, the notice to the owner, and the time required to keep the animal before acting on it, euthanasia, what have you. By state law, it should be 14 days, and the notice should be by registered mail. So if y'all are good with it, I'm going to substitute the language there so it tracks exactly with state law. And then the other revision, actually it's on the same section, was in 4-7 for dangerous animals. Neither of these were changes that current law enforcement staff made that I thought were different than state law. These have been in there for a while, and state law may have changed, and now we need to keep up with it. But so in 4-7, it allows for the summary impoundment or impounding of dangerous animals. The state law doesn't allow for that. The only time you can do this summary impounding without getting an order from a court is if you have a roaming dangerous animal. Otherwise, you need to petition and get a court's order. So I would like to strike that language and I'm just going to insert almost copy and paste, obviously tailor it a little bit to ours, but make it so it tracks exactly with state law on when we can do a summary impoundment, and which is a limited circumstance, like I say, just for roaming dangerous animals, and otherwise to make it only upon a petition and a court's order. So if y'all are good with me making those revisions to those two sections to track with state law, and you're good with the revisions I made that you asked for reflected in this purple reddish color, then I'll do those and get it to the next county council meeting.
I make a motion that we go with Mr. Root's revised changes, all of them, and then he takes it to county council.
Second.
Any discussion on those? Thank you for your work on that, and thank you for your work with animal control, and I know people don't always understand that we communicate a lot with each other, and thank you for your continued input in that. And I think some of the concerns that have been brought forth is people, that I have talked to, some of them are in fear of walking out their back door because of a neighborhood animal or an animal that just roams free all the time. So, and nobody should be in fear to be on their own property. So I think that's several of the things that y'all continue to address, as well as being very aware of people, how they take care of their animal and everything like that. So thank you for what y'all continue to do there. Any other discussion on that? And thank you, Mr. Root, for
Yes,
that.
sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Vote is 3-0.
And that was a motion to propose to send to council, full
Yes, sir.
council. Any idea what your time frame on that?
I'll have it for the November 15 meeting,
Okay.
unless y'all direct me otherwise, but
Is that good with you, Mr.
that's
Elliott?
the next meeting.
Okay. Just want to be clear on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Ms. Brock, Van Lynn Fire Station, substations.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of our Law Enforcement, Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee. You have in front of you a packet that has an orange highlighted. It's like a spreadsheet. Across the top, it says Bounty Land Substation running balance. This is primarily just for history. I feel like we've talked about Bounty Land so much. This was originally approved, as you all know, December 21st, 2010. It is high time we move forward, and because of the lag in time, from the time that we established the budget for the construction of the 10, and this is the final substations, we have, as anticipated, incurred some significant cost increase for that construction, even after identifying a more suitable location. So I'm not going to read this document to you. I feel that you all have the ability to do that, but I did want to bring to you the beginning budget, the $500,000 that was originally set aside. That's on the first page of the information packet that I gave you, and the remaining budget and what any expenditures were in that line item. And these were from 2 potential previous locations for due diligence on those sites at that time. So in that account, we do have $448,254.97. Now, there was a bond issued for the substations at the time. I believe the issuance of that was 2012. So this money technically is being held in a, for lack of a better word, an escrow in that bond. So with the increase that we would be looking at here, and there's some architectural drawings just as well. Now keep in mind the renderings are not actual engineered drawings to scale as of yet. So Joel Davis was contracted and selected to be the design build for all of the substations at that time, and that contract is still valid because this is the final substation for that. And on the general requirements from Mr. Davis's report here on the client report, this is just a breakdown of the expenses related to the construction and site work necessary for the construction of the substation. I did note a couple of matters on the first page. It might seem like pennies, but I believe is a penny saved is a penny earned. For the building permits, it would take council approval for us to do that in plan review. I believe that with council consideration, we could remove those and save that money moving forward. About halfway on the page, it also says dumpsters, and we can provide those dumpsters in-house and transportation to and from the landfill as necessary, and create just a little bit of savings there for us. But as you'll see on the 4th and final page of the client report, the new estimated cost is $1.479358 for the Bounty Land substation. We did anticipate an increase. Of course, we didn't have any idea of an exact amount because it is 12 years later from the time that we budgeted the money to the time that we are actually ready to move forward with construction. This will be a request coming forward for us to fund this additional amount and close out that current bond, which would simply be to zero out the $458,000 remaining in that bond and to create a new financing source moving forward so that we can complete this construction.
So when will it come to council?
I'm happy to bring it November 15th. I'm ready when you are, thank you. Mr. Chairman, are you okay?
Yep, we don't need a motion to send that.
I'm happy to bring it November 15th. Mr. Root can
You want a
address if
motion
we
to
need a
come out of
motion.
here? No? We don't need anything, do we?
He's relaxed.
All right.
Thank you so much. This same material will be included in this evening's meeting as well, and we'll probably have an update. One of the items that we'll put on that November 15th agenda is the council consideration for waiving the 3 matters that I had mentioned before that would make a minor but significant decrease for us.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Discussion about the complaints, compression release Jake breaking.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Don Taylor, this is a follow-up to his comments and support he had received from his community during the last council meeting regarding the noise that's, that Jake breaking carries with it. He's located over on Highway 11 and Country Junction. He had spoke with DOT personnel, I believe. He spoke with someone from Senator Alexander's office as well. In any event, he contacted Brandon Wilson with DOT to see what would need to be done to get a no Jake braking sign up. I'm not seeing those in the state that I recall. You'll see them in North Carolina a lot, certainly with higher altitude places and big topography changes. In any event, so following up on his request that we looked into it, and I think Mr. Kane wanted it looked into to just see what the next steps would be. I did speak with DOT and Mr. Brandon Wilson. He confirmed that if we did make an ordinance, and we would just have to amend our noise ordinance to say, the noise that carries with compression, release, braking, it's called a couple different things, but most commonly Jake braking. If you prohibited that noise via our noise ordinance, that the DOT would put up a sign, allow us to put up a sign in those unincorporated areas of the county that you wanted it. So just a report, if you wanted to, propose that amendment be made or to the noise ordinance, we could take it to council.
I think the biggest thing is to kind of talk to, our trucking community about, the reason why they do it is to save the vehicle itself and save the braking. It's not to be as loud as possible, so, but I would like probably.
That's the loudest way to brake.
I agree with that. Obviously. But I would probably like to have some communication with some of our truck drivers, just to kind of talk about what they would propose. If the majority of that area probably is dump trucks, going through there. I'm not saying there's not 18-wheelers, because there's 18-wheelers that go through there as well, but, hitting down 123 right down there below my office is heavy Jake brake down through there, so, but I would think from the local side of things, it'd be good to have some local input from some truck driving groups that own several dump trucks, and I know that's their way of doing that. Some of it is done for safety, and some of it is done for, to save the brakes on the truck, but I'd be
Mr.
willing to.
Chairman, I did get two comments related to this conversation from people that had viewed the last council meeting. One of the persons who contacted me, who wished to remain anonymous at this time, said that when he has a really, really full load, that he'll use the Jake brake in addition to his truck brake. So it's not just primarily a Jake brake use, that it can save the brakes when they have heavy loads or they're doing hauling. If the load that they're hauling is not on the truck that they're hauling, like if they're hauling an additional trailer, that they will use the Jake brake in addition to another brake. And the second person who reached out did not leave his name. He called our office and was adamantly against us controlling how people can start or stop their vehicles. They were the only two comments I've received, but I'd be happy to reach out. We have a plethora of customers at the quarry that I'm sure would be happy to provide their opinions and input to us.
I don't drive a truck for a living, but I live off, 24, and I understand they, even down 24, they use Jake braking as soon as they let off and stuff like that. So, some of it is safety. A lot of those places are. I think there's a proper way that we could work, together and meet the needs, because, we want everyone to be happy. And I understand when you live on a road like that, and some of them are extremely loud on the Jake brakes, and some of them are, okay. So if it comes down to that, maybe, some of them, I feel like maybe a little bit of a malfunction on the Jake brake, because they're extremely loud. So, and I imagine that's 90% of what the complaint is coming in there, because of specific vehicles are louder than others, so. But to me, before I was pushing through any kind of ordinance relating to that, I don't drive this for a living, I don't drive a truck for a living. I'd like to have some conversation in regards to that.
And if I may, just as a food for thought matter, I drive that way twice a day, every day. The high school traffic can be unpredictable, and where Country Junction comes into Highway 11,
I won't say there's limited line of sight, but it can be limiting depending on the traffic ahead of you. You can literally come around the curve going down the hill and there be a full stop. I'm not saying that's why they use it or why they don't, but I have been on Highway 11 just in front of Country Junction on a Friday at 5 o'clock and traffic be backed up beyond 183. And with the lack of visibility because of the terrain, I've had a moment where I wondered if the person behind me was going to be able to stop. Just a note, I'm not saying that that's why they're doing it, but
And we're not the first county to talk about this. Some of them have talked about it, and others have seen that, it can hurt your truck driving industry. So again, that comes down into the safety aspect of it as well, so,
Do you want us to reach out to the hauling community and try to get them back for the next committee meeting?
Yeah, I would think getting some, I know they don't have a lot of time to get online and write about stuff, and they'll probably adamantly be against it, but to understand what we're trying to do on the community-wise versus, making sure that we're, being friendly to the truck driving community as well, so.
That's what we'll do.
Mr. Chair, one question. I was under the impression that what the gentleman that spoke was saying that he does not live on Highway 11. He lives off of Country Junction Road.
Correct.
But does he live at the corner of Highway 11 and Country Junction?
I don't know exactly where he lives.
Okay.
I think he lives off.
I was understanding it was Country Junction and
Yeah.
that four-way stop.
Yeah, to me, and this is just my personal opinion, I understand, we have, the economy relies on trucking, we have to have it. In residential areas, unless there's active construction going on, it just seems like he was complaining about it happening every morning at between 6 and 7, I think, in his area. So it's presumably somebody lives in that area and yeah, they're trying to save their brakes, I assume. I assume they don't have a full load, but I don't know. I'm curious about the specific situation that he's in, because my thought would be, well, unless it's an active job site, trucks should be using the highways, if at all possible. And I would think we wouldn't want to restrict any of this type of braking on the highways. But in residential areas where people live, is that even feasible, Mr. Rude?
To restrict the traffic? No.
Not to restrict traffic, but to restrict the use of jake braking off of a highway,
Yeah, I think
state highway.
if we could identify the areas, we had a rational basis, and it's gonna be the litmus test for it. If you have a rational basis to, curtail this type of noise in this specific area versus this other area, then yes, it would carry. It would be all right.
Because I wouldn't be a proponent of restricting it on highways or anywhere that our manufacturing facilities are bringing goods in or taking goods out. That's completely acceptable. The highway's a highway. It's made for that.
Well,
But if somebody just happens to live down the road and I don't want to use my brakes, rather use the engine to brake it, and if that's the case with this gentleman, that's unreasonable.
well, oftentimes though, in my truck, the engine braking actually makes it safer to operate the vehicle. So I understand both sides to it. It's kind of annoying at the same time but if they're coming through 6, 7, they can be hauling. We've got people load up that night at the rock quarry and they're hauling to that area.
That's true.
Especially where he's talking about through there, sees a lot of construction, Salem, and so your gravel loads and stuff are coming through there. So, jake braking is safety, and so you get into the whole habit of, if you limit that and somebody is unable to stop, because it is a double braking, it's a jake brake,
Right.
the engine braking, and on top of that. So if he's unable to do that, especially in those residential areas, where actually you'd be more inclined for somebody to pull out in front of you or to stop quicker, to me, in your residential areas, and I don't think any truck driver says, I'm gonna be as loud as I can through these areas. They understand that, I mean, there is part of it, but I just, to me, I would definitely not be in favor of saying, hey, if you're off Highway 11 and 123, you can't use your Jake brake, because
Could we put a sign up that says, please limit the use of Jake brake?
please be quiet. People are sleeping, but, so, I mean, there's two sides. They're trying to do their job, and they're trying to actually be safe while doing their
Right.
job and save their truck. And so, I see both sides to it, but at the same time, I just, I just, that specific area he's talking about, it is a highly traveled area, and I'm sure there's just as many loud trucks that do burnouts and go through there based on the black marks through Country Junction area that have the same issue. Obviously, they're probably maybe not allowed, I don't know. So, they do burnouts in Oakway all day long, so it's just kind of part of it. So, right in front of their driveway, so, and we can't limit that. So it's just one of the things that I think with this, it is, you see the signs in North Carolina and those things, but you also see the truck drivers giving some pushback and actually winning a few battles on there because they're like, we're trying to do our job. Jake brakes are for safety as well as saving our trucks. If the trucks wear out more, the cost is going up more. So that's just, I wouldn't be in favor of limiting that. There's so many more battles to have in this county than Jake brakes. I think that's what we need to be focused on personally. And I understand, and I live off a major highway, so I do hear it as well. So, there's a truck that leaves at 5:30 in the morning and, anyway, I think he goes fast by my house for a reason, but anyway. So, any other?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to retract what I said. If you said it's near the four-way stop, that's not where I thought he indicated that the jake braking was taking place.
It's somewhere out there.
My memory said it was at Highway 11 and near Country Junction, but you're talking about 183 in Country Junction?
Well, it happens there too,
Okay.
so.
Well, I was just saying the topo played a part of it if it was the 11 Country
Yeah.
Junction. If that's the other location, that may not.
All you have to do is look at where the asphalt's pushed up at the stop signs from the amount of truck
Frequent or at
traffic.
Country Junction?
So, anyway, all right. Anything else on that? Okay. So, Mr. Reed, opioid settlement?
Yes, sir. I provided to council, to the sheriff's coroner, emergency services, of course, Ms. Brock, a memorandum regarding the opioid settlement funds and how we access those funds. It's a confidential attorney-client product, so we'd like to keep it that way, but I can hit some of the highlights for purposes tonight. At this point, settlements have been reached with what they're called the Big Three distributors, which are McKesson Corporation, Cardinal Health, AmeriSourceBergen, and as well as Johnson & Johnson / Janssen. The probable funds that are dedicated to Oconee County, and when I say dedicated, we'll shift into the term guaranteed funds over the course of the next, I guess it's 18 years, no more than that. Well, I'll get to my years in a second. It's $6,408,000. That's subject to some change fluctuation. In the north direction, we have, meaning going up, we have bankruptcies we're dealing with Purdue, Endo, Mallinckrodt, that may end up sending more money our way. Of course, the litigation is still ongoing with a number of defendants, including the pharmaceutical companies and the pharmacies. So in any event, of that $6,408,000, it's going to be distributed, may certainly go up, it's going to be distributed yearly, and we already have a little bit of a backlog for the last 2 years that the board fund, which we've talked about, the opioid recovery board fund, it will have access to from the state treasurer. The monies that are in the guaranteed fund, and just to break that down again, the way it's set up is all the political subdivisions in the state have access to guaranteed funds. This is what we will get so long as we apply for it and list an approved use that we're gonna apply these funds toward. Of the guaranteed funds, so far the county could access, once the application window opens up on October 24th, can access $494,000. Approximately $250,000 or to $300,000 will be added each year to that. That fund, those funds do not include the Johnson & Johnson settlement funds, and that will have a bump up of about $1 million for the second year, so the current year, actually. They're still waiting on those funds. But so, back to the structure. Guaranteed funds, we will get those funds as long as we submit the application in a timely way with approved uses that we'll go over in a second. There's also discretionary funds, which are part of the settlement funds that have been recovered, but the opioid recovery board gets to decide who gets those funds, and those are also based on an application, and it's gonna be the most appealing application, who's, we've got the best uses, for these discretionary funds, and it catches the board's attention, and they award it to whatever political subdivision they see fit. Tonight's discussion is really just focused on the guaranteed funds, because we will, as I mentioned, need to get an application in during this first window between October 24th and December 2nd. So we only have one council meeting, tonight not included, between that time period, so we'll need council to sign off on that application during that November 15th meeting. So unless the Johnson & Johnson funds come in, we'll have $494,000 approximately to apply for. That's guaranteed so long as we apply for them correctly, which leads to the approved uses. And I've given you all a truncated version of that list. Of course, there's a large document that explains those lists, or those uses in detail. There's core strategies that are going to give them priority. Certainly getting drugs that reverse opioid overdoses, medication-assisted treatments, assisting pregnant and postpartum women, expanding treatment for neonatal abstinence syndrome, and you all have the list going on from there. And then that list dovetails into the approved uses that are within the treatment category and approved uses that are in the prevention category. I don't think we have, the time right now is probably not the correct place right now to discuss and break down each of these and what the county wants to apply for, certainly because y'all can't make the final decision in any event, but you have all the materials. My suggestion would be that you direct the county administrator to work with the coroner, the sheriff, emergency services, and anyone else that she deemed relevant to it, to comb through the approved uses and to come to council on November 15th with the suggested ones for you all to say yes or no to, and then you give that yes or no, and then we fill out the application and get it in a timely way.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to thank the council for pursuing these lawsuits. Obviously, we wish there wasn't a need to sue companies for harm that they've probably touched every family in this room. And I know it's touched mine. But this will be the beginning of an opportunity to try to move forward, stopping addiction, and preventing folks from trying addictive drugs for the first time, and also saving lives. But I'm very grateful that, and I thank you, Mr. Root, for your work on this, and of course our attorneys. And I'm glad that we'll begin to see some funding coming in. I did have a call with Hunter Combe today, just to ask him about the, Ms. Brock and I were in a meeting last week. We were talking about mental health being a huge issue as it relates to not only addiction, but homelessness and all the things that are often intertwined with that. And he said that there is a task force that they're involved with that covers Oconee County. I wasn't even aware of this. So I would also encourage Ms. Brock, if you're aware of that or if you're not aware of it, reach out to Mr. Combe. He said he would get back to me today sometime, just with more information, put us in touch with their clinical director for some of the mental health treatment opportunities. But I'm glad to see, the state's moving pretty quickly on receiving these funds to deploy them to stop the harm. But that's just a little update for y'all, and again, appreciate the support from our law enforcement and emergency services and our healthcare system as we begin to try to overcome this epidemic. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all my comments.
I'd like to thank you for your time. I know it's been a lot on your plate to do that, and we demand a lot, and that proves your worth to this county. And grateful that council decided to proceed along with advice from our other attorneys as well. And thank for their great work, and Ms. Brock and your team for the information that they've compiled, and the sheriff and the coroner and your groups. Thank you for that. So I think y'all see firsthand of the devastation it causes. So, we'll continue to move forward with the planning, and appreciate all the support that's been given moving forward. Thank you. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.